Gauge British cars, and today we're going to do something a little different. I took the Triumph Herald out for a ride the other day and I noticed that the alternator was acting up, so I bought a rebuild kit for it. So the different part is this alternator is a Chevy alternator. So the Chevy internally regulated alternator from about 1967 to about 1980 thereabouts is pretty much a direct swap for a Lucas alternator of that same vintage. So it fits on a TR6. You can make them fit anything that has a generator mount pretty easily. Just a little bit of fabrication. And then of course anything that's externally regulated, you have to tie some of the wires together, and I did it so long ago I don't remember which ones are which, but I looked at a wiring diagram for the Herald, and because this alternator, all it needs is the main output terminal, which is pretty easy, and then it needs one wire that's hot from the ignition, and the other wire comes from the ignition switch or the ignition light in the dashboard. So that's all you need. So I was surprised how easy it was to figure out which wires to tie together, but we'll talk about that later. So anyway, it's a Chevy alternator and it fits in a British car. And of course these are 100 amps and about, they're readily available almost everywhere. You can get them from junkyards, everything else. And then the big thing is you can buy rebuild kits for them, and they cost, I just bought this one here in California, it was about $29. So it came with the new front bearing, which is the one that goes out. I believe these are the diodes and the brushes and the springs, and this is the regulator. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Not that tough. One thing you probably do want to do, Chevy alternators can be clocked in different directions, so you want to just wind up putting it back the same way that it was. So the easiest way to do that is take a pen and we'll just put a mark going across when it comes time to put it back together. So the hardest thing to do with this is you got to get this nut off, and it's not that it's that difficult, but if you don't have an impact tool, you have to try and lock the thing up. So with an impact tool, there it is, that easy. But when I was a kid trying to do that, trying to get something to lock this up is kind of difficult. So I guess you can use a chain wrench, or before you dismount it, when the fan belts are still on it, you can tighten the fan belts and then use a wrench on it. That'll probably work. But like I say, having an air tool, or of course these new impact guns will probably do the same thing. So, and in fact I think this is actually a Lucas pulley, that this is a bigger shaft than a Lucas. It just drilled it out to the correct size. And this is the Chevrolet fan. So that's the front part. Then there's 4 bolts here, and those need to come off. And I believe they're 5/16, and they just come out like that. And now we just need to separate the halves. So when you separate this is an aluminum case, that's an aluminum case. You'll see there's steel in the middle, and that's part of the field windings. You want the side with the pulley to come off of this, and this steel winding wants to stay in the back half of the case because it's wired into all the stuff in the back. So to get it apart, I put the nut on the end of the shaft just to protect it. Held it like this, tapped it a couple of times just to sort of open this up a bit. And then of course, Murphy's Law, this side came away, which I didn't want. But this side it cracked open a bit, so you get a putty knife in there, work that around, and now that gap is bigger. We should be able to get this nut off of there. Get it the rest of the way off, just prying it off with a screwdriver. Again, you want to work your way around. If anything jams up, you really need to stop and reevaluate, because there shouldn't be anything. I mean, it's fit tight, but it's not that tight, so if you get something worse than that, you get something wrong going on. So there's the front half of the casing. And you can see there's the front bearing 3 screws and knock it out, knock the new one in. I'm not going to change this one because this is good and I need that for something else. So, and we need to take this out. So you want to inspect this, make sure that the accommodator is not buggered up. You don't see any burning. This alternator is not actually all that old. Don't forget there's a spacer on there, so don't lose that. And here's the works. So there are the diodes, here are the brushes, and there's the electronics. So to get this apart, so these smaller screws are 1/4 inch. Get these out of there. So what we're doing is taking the screws out of this rectifier piece. So there's 3 screws there and then these 2 tabs. These are the 3 studs that the rectifier is in, but if you look, there's 3 wires on here too. So you have to get those out. And you don't want to, you got to put them back in the same spot, so you want to pull them out of the way, but they'll be pretty easy to orient, but don't go tying them in a knot or something. So 3 nuts holding this electronics piece in, and it's also got this, looks like a resistance coil. Yeah, and I bet you this is why this one didn't work. So you can see, herein lies the problem. This is the resistor that goes across. And you can see it's got a fine wire, probably doesn't show up in the camera, but there's inside a ceramic tube, and that was broken when I took that apart. So I'm thinking that's what was causing issues with this. So I've had to order that part, and it'll be here in a couple of days, but in the meantime we can put together some of the rest of this. So, pull this pin out, and that lets you take off this brush. So there's the brush, and I think these are the same. Let's put the new one back in. Put that pin back through before we forget where it went. And then they gave us new springs. Put a new spring down the hole. And then the brush goes on top of that. And they actually thoughtfully gave you a little piece of wire. This is here. And what you do is you feed that through the hole in the brush. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. So take, that plastic piece out. And you can see there's a hole in the brush, and that'll go through that tab. And that's how you can put this back together when you're done. That this wire will be sticking out through part of the alternator. These 2 holes go on those 2 pins. This is the new regulator. This is laying down in there. That goes there. This one back in just to hold it all together. And then this is the diode, or the diode pack. So that goes on there. And we need to push these 3 wires back down into place. There's the 3rd one. So while I had it apart, I tightened the stud that the big alternator wire goes on. So I put the capacitor back there, and the tab for the capacitor has that screw right there. That one. Got this one screw holding all this down, and this tab went that this plastic pin goes through it. That resistor goes across there, and it'll go through that one as well. And then when this gets bolted down, it gets the screw with the washer or the insulated washer on top. But we're going to have to wait a couple of days for that to get here. So we will do that. Through the magic of editing, it'll be fixed. And there we go. We have our parts. So this is the new resistor. As you can see, that's in one piece, and the wire is wrapped on the outside. So the end that's under the brush gets this pin, this hollow pin, which isolates it like so. And then that gets this screw with the metal washer. And then the screw with the, I think, plastic washer, it's plastic or ceramic, one of the two, goes over here. And then we just tighten those down. And then the third bolt that holds the other end of the resistor is the grounding bolt, so it has a metal washer. So these two. Snug all three of these down. Remember, the correct torque is not a quarter turn past broken. It's just snug. Don't forget you're going through plastic. So, and let's check these other ones just to make sure that they're tight. This is the condenser. This is really just there, I'm sure, for radio interference. So you don't have an audio attack. And then the 3 field windings, which are over here. So it'll feel pretty good. And then we tightened this one up already, which was noticeably loose to start with. So, now don't forget we've got this. We've got our brushes pinned back. I want to put a little fresh grease on that end bearing, so I'll have to go find some of that. This is wheel bearing grease. Let's put some in. It's a roller bearing. I don't want to go crazy amount of stuff in there. So those are tight, those are tight, those are tight, that's tight. We've greased that, and the brushes are pinned back. So this goes in. There we go. And this is going to go on, and don't forget we made our mark for which way it needs to line up, so I just need to find that. There it is. And then we flip it over and put our bolts in from this side. And that should draw all this together, so go around not too tight until they're all pulled down, so we don't want to yank this thing, crack a housing or something. And don't forget your spacer. So that goes on. And our fan, pulley, big washer, and the nut. And then we tighten it up with the air wrench again. So the air's a little low on that, but you get the idea. So this is the mount. So this piece This is the standard generator mount, but I welded a tube in between because the generator usually bolts here and there, right? And then this alternator is going to go here, so I also made this Z shape. This goes underneath one of the timing cover. I put a stud in, so I got a nut holding the timing cover, and then this piece, and then another nut. And that just rotates out of the way, and then I'll tighten it up again later. There's a this is the drive cable, the power cable. This goes back here on, this is the solenoid for the starter, so that's the end of the positive cable on the battery. And then I fit this plug on, and that went onto the black wire, went to the yellow and green wire, and this one to here. So it's got a fuse, goes to the positive cable. So this is just the sensor wire that just tells it this is 12 volts. You know, or while the voltage is low, it turns the alternator on higher and lower. And the green and yellow, the yellow and green wire is switched, which comes through the back of the ignition warning light. And then the regulator was here. So yellow to yellow and green, brown to brown, and then to this condenser. And this other yellowish one is just taped off. And that's all you need to, and because you took the regulator out, and that's all you needed for all that. So it's going to go with the big boss down through the long bolt that's through the old generator bracket. Put that down there. Show you. So you see this bolt's not in all the way yet, but it's through the bottom of that. I've rolled this up, and then we'll just push this bolt through that bracket. It's a lot easier with two hands, but we'll get along. There we go. That goes there, and a flat washer goes on there, and this is a nylock bolt. Put that on. And I need to tighten this one up. And tighten the alternator up. Make sure that the belt's fairly tight. It's only about a ½ an inch of deflection. And then that one's tight, and don't be too crazy with it, otherwise you're going to strip it out. You can go ahead and tighten up the two bolts on that lower bracket, which I'm going to need to move you out of the way for, but you get the idea. So the only thing left now is this, and so you can see I didn't have a proper end, so that's just a spark plug end on there. And then the third bolt. So see how it does on a cold start. It's been sitting there for 4 days, so it has a metal washer. And for California, it's cool right now. It's probably 65. So go get my woolies. All right, choke out. And there you go, it's charging merrily away. It got kind of dark out here, but I'm hoping you can see that at least. Took me a little while to figure out, but when I started up it wasn't charging, and that was because I did not pull the wire out of the brushes, so the brushes weren't in contact with the armature. Other than that, everything was fine. So I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and we'll see you next time.